Folks, I wanted to go over this toggle button in a little bit more detail because I was having a bit of a brain freeze in class. And so for my sketch, I've got the very basic button system going. I've got a button pin on pin 10. I'm using pin mode input pull up, so I don't need a resistor on it. It's just got one leg going to pin 10, the other leg going to ground. I've got my serial begin, and then in my loop, I'm reading the button state with digital read and printing the button state. And if we look at the serial monitor, that's working as I would expect it. When I push it, I get a bunch of zeros. When I release it, I get a bunch of ones. And so to think about this toggle problem, it's going to help to really break it down into very small steps. And so the first thing I really want to do is to see if I can detect that moment when it changes from 1 to 0. That's going to be like the trigger for the toggle and the thing that I want to see. And so if I think about that, the best way to do when is that moment that I press the button? It's when that state changes. And so to detect when the state changes from 1 to 0, I kind of need to know the current button state and the previous button state, and I can compare those two things, and if they're different, I know that the button has been pushed or released, and if they're the same, it is either continuously being pushed or continuously being released. So to do that, I'm going to add a new global variable. I'm going to call it old state, and we'll have it equal to 1 to start, which is the same as the default state for the button. And then in my loop here, I'm going to add a conditional if button state is 0. That means it's been pressed. And the old state is 1. So if the old state is in the release state, and the button state is in the push state, I'm at that moment where it switches. Then I'm going to print the button state. And then after my conditional, each time I loop through, I want to save the previous state. So regardless of if it's pushed or not, I'm going to say that my old state should equal button state. And so that's how I'll continuously get what was the previous instantaneous previous state of the button. Okay, so let's upload that. And in the serial monitor, we immediately see the difference here. Since the print is in the if, I'm not getting that constant stream. And now when I press the button, I get the 1 0. Press it again, I get 1 0. Press it again, I'm holding it down. I'm not getting that stream of zeros because as soon as we go in, right, button state equals 0, old state equals 1, and then old state will equal 0 because button state was 0. Then this conditional is not met, it's not true, so it doesn't print. Until I release the button, button state is now 1, but old state is 0, so nothing happens. Old state then equals 1, and then we come back. Now they're both equal to 1, so this still isn't met until I press it again, and the button state becomes 0, and the old state is 1. Okay, so that's giving us the how we can detect if the button is being pressed. Okay. From there, now we need another way to tell if we're doing a toggle or not. So within here, let's add some more things. I need another variable. Actually, let's say int temp equals 0. And we're going to say if temp equals 0, let's say 0 is off, so we'll turn our button off, or LED off, so I'm going to say digital write LED pin low. And at the same time, I'm going to say temp equals 1, so I'm going to flip its state. I was using a Boolean with false and true. Will function the exact same way. We could use a Boolean here too. But I do need to declare my LED pin, right? I haven't done that yet, so we'll do another const int LED pin equals 13 and pin mode LED pin output. There, okay. So if the temp is 0, turn it off, else if temp, I don't need to say this, but else, which basically means if temp is 1, we're going to turn it on. Digital write LED pin high, and then set temp back to 0. Okay. Now the important thing to realize about this is that this checking of the temp variable only happens now when the button is pressed. Right? That was the point of doing the new state and the old state. So it's not like this is going to be flipping back and forth constantly. Let's see if this works. Oops. Digital. Alright, so I push the button, I get my 0, that would turn the LED off. The LED is off, so I can't see that. I push it again, I get a 0, but my LED comes on. Push it again, the LED goes off. Push again, the LED goes on. And I could do some other stuff to make that more apparent. I might want to switch my temp to be 1 initially, so it turns the LED on the first time I click it. That might seem more intuitive for people. And then other things, instead of just printing this button state, I might say something like going in here, serial print, what should we say? We should say button clicked, and I'm going to put space there and make this just a single print without the carriage return, and then we'll print the line with that temp variable. Alright, so now when I click, button clicked, 1, and the LED is on. That's this one down here. Click again, temp is 0, the LED goes off. Okay, so that's the tricky thing, right? It seems simple to make a momentary button, a toggle button, but we actually need these two global variables to do that, to think about what was the old button state just to detect single clicks, and then the temp to do the actual toggling. There's another neat thing that we could do with this now, though, since we know that the button is only being clicked once, no matter how long I hold it. I could actually now count how many times it's being clicked. So let's add another variable. We'll call it click count. That's going to be equal to 0. And so now all I have to do is increment click count when I'm in this state. So every time it's pressed, I'm going to say click count plus plus, which is the same as saying click count equals click count plus 1. And then I want to look at that too. So we've got our toggle there. Let's, instead of printing out the temp now, let's do serial.print click count and serial.println. I'm going to add a space first so that there'll be spaces on either side of my click count number, and I can say button clicked. It's going to be a number of times. This is like incredibly proper English for debugging, but it can be helpful to see it. We'll upload that. Oops, I need my parentheses and semicolon. And this semicolon. And now, button clicked 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, 7 times, 8 times, 9 times, right? So now, not in addition to like toggling something on and off, we could say like, okay, I want something to happen when the button is clicked the 10th time, right? So I could say if click count equals 10, do something, turn on the different LED or whatever. So that's just another way to think about counting button clicks, to detect individual button clicks instead of this continuous stream, and to do our toggle.